Alrighty, welcome everybody. Welcome to Remco and Sven's Randstad's Data Strategy and Framework. Remco is Senior Vice President, Digital Transformation at Randstad's Global Digital Factory. And before that, he was Director of the Global BI at the Coca-Cola Company. And Sven he's in charge of the Data and Analytics Department, and he's passionate about data in Google, and he's also a snowboarder and plays guitar. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Remco and Sven. Remco and Sven, welcome.
Yes. Hello. Good morning, everybody. Indeed, I'm Remco Brouwer. I work for a company called Randstad, and if you're from the Benelux, you probably know us because we are what you would call in Dutch an uitzendbureau, but we are actually a global player, the biggest one in the recruitment space around the world. So we are in 39 countries. And I have a couple of slides to talk about our data strategy. So I own the data strategy for Randstad and the data platforms and the analytics. And then Sven, who works for a Forecast Devo team, will talk through some of the frameworks that they built for us. So without further ado, Randstad. So Randstad is a staffing firm. We exist around 62 years, sorry. Started in the Netherlands and today in 39 countries. And here is our mission. Our purpose is to support people and organizations to realize their true potential. And we basically take care of the whole employment cycle from onboarding, changing jobs, all the way to offboarding or outplacement. And here are the numbers of 2020. You can imagine 2020 was a bit of a difficult year for us. So our sales dropped from 23 billion to 20.7, as a lot of companies were offloading people in 2020. At the same time, you can also realize that 2021 is probably our busiest year ever. And we just posted the best quarter in the history of our company. So everybody is hiring again, and especially in IT, there is no unemployment in IT. We are being asked by clients to look for hundreds and thousands of people in all sorts of areas, particularly IT. So you see here a couple of the numbers from 2020. So on an average day, about 550,000 people are working through Randstad around the world. We ourselves are about 35,000 people. And we have about over 4,000 branches in these 39 countries. You might know us from a couple of more brand names. So Randstad, of course, is the original brand name. It is called Randstad in all the 39 countries. I always get this question. We also own this company called Monster. In the Netherlands, it's called Monster Board. And maybe you recognize some other stuff. Yacht is in the Benelux. OC is in the French-speaking markets, a very big engineering firm. Tempo Team, you might know some more. Our digital strategy at Randstad is called Tech and Touch, and it basically, we believe that changing jobs is very much a human thing, right? So we believe the combination of human interaction assisted by technology. So therefore, we say we are the most agile integrator of tech, supporting a core human touch. Or we also say we are the trusted human partner in a technology-driven world of talent. And you can imagine that the world of talent is rapidly digitizing. So more and more people are using platforms. More and more people are working across borders. Skills become more global. There is a huge transformation going on in our industry, and we'd like to be ahead of all that. So the slide that I would like to talk about is very much the connected enterprise, right? So I guess this is true in many industries, but certainly in ours. The company that is the quickest at connecting an idea to a service or a solution is typically the one that wins. And we are entering, well, we already are in the era of, I would say, throwaway IT. So you build something, you deploy it, you use it, you delete it, and you rinse and repeat, and you start again. So the data is the constant factor in the future where the solutions will come and go. And I don't know about the companies that you work for, but the speed at which solution or data, the speed at which technology comes and goes is only increasing, right? And there's never a day without some business guy saying, hey, look at this startup, or hey, look at this SaaS vendor. And it's about getting the data where it needs to be, as safe and secure. So our data strategy, therefore, follows a couple of principles. The first principle is keep our options open for tomorrow. I guess that's true for every company. So we all know what we did in the last 62 years, but what will we do in 5 years? I would say that most companies don't really know which products and services they will have in 5 years. So for a data strategy, it's very important, of course, to keep your options open and to make sure that you don't do anything with your data that you might regret in the future when new opportunities arise. The second one, of course, is clear data ownership. We need to, if I'm the governor of the data, I need to make sure that I can account for every byte that I have in my data ocean, we call it at Randstad, or data lakes. Clear ownership, of course, is completely key. The third one, and especially for a company like Randstad, where we sit on literally hundreds of millions of resumes, we have to be absolutely relentless on information security, right? We sit on data that is typically not even ours, right? Because if you guys have your CV at Randstad, then it doesn't mean that it's our property. It's still yours. We are the custodians of it, so we better take good care of it. So you can imagine that we have a lot of security to make sure that there is no broad data access and that we keep everything as secure as we can. Here, one of the principles is we're going to go after a global data and analytics platform. Why is that? Because most of our clients, or many more of our clients, are global, right? So we do business with the biggest companies in the world, and they literally ask us for 1,000 employees in Germany, 20,000 in Switzerland, and another 5,000 in Italy. So the demand for people is a global one. And at the same time, we also see things like skills, particularly in IT, is something that we can predict around the world. I have another slide on that later. So global platform, global master and reference data, which to a lot of companies is a complete no-brainer, but in an industry like the staffing industry, which is still very much locally driven until recently, global master data is actually quite a new idea. And finally, of course, design for customization. One size does not fit all. How do we find the balance between driving scale for our platforms and at the same time being relevant locally? Because every market is a little bit different. We have to deal with a lot of legislation, of course, that is different. Privacy is different, even between the 50 states of the US. So you have to design for customization. So, and the last one is probably a very important one: automate, automate, automate. Right. So turn it into a factory, and so that you drive more scale and you have more efficiencies and you're more secure in general. Right. And if you have a dev, a test, a QA, and a production platform, there is a lot of automation that you need to do. So you want to do that as much as you can. And the final thing is that we say we apply something that at Randstad we call the Lego philosophy. We're big fans of Legos, where we say, okay, so Lego blocks come in many different shapes and forms, like data. There's all sorts of data. Almost no two data sets are the same. But if you describe in a very detailed way on how you connect them together, just like Lego is, then you could still build the most beautiful things. And Lego therefore needs to be governed well, and we therefore have a very simple slide that shows our data strategy. So our data strategy, number one, is about defining standards around information. So describe your information, describe your data in a very accurate way. Number two is do governance carefully. So buy yourself a Lego box where you can put all the pieces with all their colors in separate little containers, so that you always know what you have, where it is, and who owns it. Right. So a lot of governance. The third one is the easy one. Find yourself a platform to build on. At Randstad, for data and analytics, we very much went for Google's clouds, right? So GCP. So that's the platform to build on. And then, of course, if you add a little bit of purpose and imagination, then you can build whatever you want, right? At relevance, at speed, and agility. And because we use Agile, of course, this beautiful Lego set is not the first version of your solution. First, you build the minimum viable product, or the MVP. And this is in a very different, simple nutshell, how our data strategy works. So we are going to talk with Sven later about the data framework, which is our Lego factory. So if you look at how it works, it basically has a couple of stages. The first stage is you're going to receive your raw data or your raw material, and you keep it in its original format and store it in a data lake for future use cases, right? This is what data lakes are for. You don't draw any conclusions. You keep all your options open for tomorrow. And on the right, you actually see the raw material of Lego. So data lakes are very important. You might not need them today, but in the future, somebody will come with a use case that you think, oh, I need to reshape the way my data needs to be depicted. So that's step one. Step two, and that is something that you don't have with Lego, but we do have in our world very much. You need to strip all the data from all its PI. So we do encrypt all the personal identifiable information, and we put everything in a data vault so that everything is row level encrypted. And that's of course very important, because also I need to make sure that the PI data doesn't get exposed to anybody that shouldn't have access to it. So there's a lot of focus on that. Then your data is ready to be, let's say, like Legos, molded into global information models. So we have a very strong language, which we call the globally aligned information model at Randstad, which is our language in which systems are going to talk to each other. So you can translate your raw data into that. And then you can start building data warehouses, data marts, and you can really focus on the use case that is at hand. And finally, when you've done that, you can publish the outcome, just like Lego does in a box, to whatever you need, right? It could be reporting, could be analytics, data science, event streaming systems, anything that we can do. Finally, I have a couple of slides. So this is the picture that we see. Sven will talk in more detail. He has a more technical version of this, but this is the simple version. Information flows from the left to the right. So it comes in stage 0, where we keep it unencrypted, where it is unencrypted. Stage 1 is the data lake, where we store it as it is, and then you start seeing it cleaning. Then we talk about local Legos, because I have a lot of local systems that I need to take care of. Then it moves to global Legos, and then it becomes solution data. I depict it as a cube, but it could be anything, basically. And then off to the right, it goes into our applications, to our solutions, our BI tools. We have a global Tableau platform. So this is the picture. But the next guy can talk about this a lot better than I can. Finally, let me show you 3 slides of the type of stuff that we do with the data. So first of all, we have a big data science department that is constantly looking through both the resumes of the world as well as all the vacancies in the world on what the trends are, right? So when can we predict new requirements or skills to appear either in resumes or in vacancies, so that we can help our clients and our talents better to figure out what sort of skills are going to be needed next. There's a lot of trends that you can spot having the data globally available. I will show you 2 solutions finally. So this is a solution that was launched in the US and is now coming to Europe, and we call it BrightFit. And this is for people that get outplaced. We had a lot of them in 2020, not a lot of them in 2021. But it is basically a solution where people can upload their resume, can show their skills, can figure out or can tell the application what it is that would like to do next. And then the system will not only tell them about the skills that they're missing, but they're also going to give these people a skills fit score, where people can say, well, this is the sort of training that you must do. And it will then also offer you the training to do, right? So at the end, it will tell you all the trainings that you can follow, and we can help with that. And the idea is that these people find their dream job quicker or get back onto the labor market quicker after losing their job. And so that's one way of building apps. But at the same time, we have another app which we call Randstad Market Insights. And this is more towards clients. And this is basically telling our employees as well as our clients the labor market trends, right? So it tells for every part of the world where we have this data available, what the demand and what the supply is for certain skills, right? So you can say, I need, in this case, it says a Java developer. So what are the salaries of Java developers based on their experience? What are the skills that are being the hottest that the market is looking for? Who are the companies that are hiring? And we use this for clients to help them figure out also where they should be asking for certain skills. Because if you have a warehouse or an office in Boston as well as in New York, we can probably tell you that it makes more sense to hire a certain skill in New York than it is in Boston or vice versa. And we see a lot of very global trends on where the world is heading. These are the slides that I have in my 20 minutes. So I am gonna hand over to Sven. Sven, are you there? Yes.
I'm here. Thank you very much, Remco. It's really great to see how the data strategy behind Randstad is working and how you compare it with Lego blocks. What I would like to do in this second part of the presentation is to go into a bit more technical detail on the framework that we provide Randstad with Devoteam G-Cloud. Let me try to get to the next slide. So we call it Flix, a data warehouse accelerator for Google Cloud. And we have been working with Randstad over the past years to fully implement this on a global scale. So I will first start with a small introduction about Devoteam G-Cloud and the framework. Then we'll explain, okay, why an organization can leverage such a framework, and then really go into detail, okay, what does Flix actually solve? So let me start with a small introduction about Devoteam G-Cloud. So we are the pillar of Devoteam that fully focuses on Google Cloud and Google Workspace. We have more than 350 Google experts across EMEA that are highly certified. Also, Google really recognizes our expertise because we have, I think, more than 7 specializations right now. So that is, really great. We have multiple areas of expertise. For example, the most relevant here today is the data-driven intelligence, and of course also the security behind that data. And we're not just there for implementing. We really go from strategy to implementation and of course optimization at the end. So we have multiple customers, for example, Randstad, Vesta, RBFA that you see here, where we migrate on-premise architectures to the cloud. But we also help digital native customers. So organizations that are really born in the cloud and really start from best practices on day one and help them accelerate with our expertise. So let me cover why an organization would need a data framework. And maybe quickly to mention, if you have any questions about Remco's presentation or this presentation, we will do a Q&A session at the end. So yeah, you can just post them in the chat and we will cover them at the end of the presentation. So when you want to set up this data warehouse, as Remco was explaining, you have all this raw data and you want to start building it in the cloud. There are some challenges that emerge. Of course, the first thing you should always worry about is security. So how can you have a clear view on all the data that's in your data warehouse, all the sensitive PII data? How can you keep track of everyone that has access to it? Because in the cloud environment, you can easily put data in 1 million places, give some manual access to people, and then you need to manage that in some way. How can you also make sure that you have this industrialized approach? Like Randstad is a global company. They want to work in the same way in those different countries, but there is still maybe some custom solution needed. So how can you work in this consistent way that someone from one country can also work on the other country's data, for example, and have that in a consistent way? Then how can you make sure your data is discoverable? So both your technical and business users should know, okay, what data is in there, what is the quality of it, where does it come from? All of that needs to be discoverable in a sort of data catalog, for example. And then how to avoid complexity, lastly. So setting up a data warehouse is not only the job of a data engineer that can write SQL. It's about having infrastructure set up, how to do proper DevOps. So you need infra engineers, DevOps engineers, all of that. So this is becoming a very, very complex project. So what Flix helps you to do is to focus on those business insights and let you focus on writing those SQLs. And we take care of all the rest. So this is the monitoring, the data quality, the PII management, the resource deployment and DevOps best practices. All of that are baked into our framework, and you can leverage them. So how do we do that? Is first of all by providing you a single point of user access management. So instead of having to click through a cloud console to provide access, we give you a set of configuration files where you can have this single point of access management, and where you can tag the data in your data warehouse, and make sure to select which one are sensitive, which one are not, which one should have double encryption, all of that. So we provide everything in a consistent way by having automated deployment. So everything we do has CI/CD and is set up with infrastructure as code. Because if you want to have proper DevOps practices, for example, in a software project, then you need to merge one branch to another one. That's already a complex thing. But what if you have data pipelines running with schemas that change? All of that. How can you make sure that you go from a development environment where you did a certain schema change and deployed it on a production environment in a consistent and reliable way? That's what Flix is taking care of. Then the data discovery. As you define your transformations in Flix and you start modeling your data with your SQL statements, Flix will make sure that it understands those transformations, it parses them, and really finds the dependencies between every field, and can push all of that information to a data catalog of your choice. And then we avoid complexity by making sure to leverage open source tools, what Google Cloud is always focusing on, to have those, for example, Apache Airflow or Apache Beam frameworks, and really use those tools and define them with code. So such as infrastructure as code, leverage Terraform to automate those deployments. So this is a high-level overview of the framework. It uses a bit more logos than the presentation of Remco, but what you can see here is what you should focus on are those layers in the transformation layer. So it all starts here. If you look at the bigger picture, with ingesting your data, your organization might have multiple applications, and there are databases behind it. Those can be just relational databases, NoSQL databases, can be streaming, Google Analytics data, you name it. And first, all that data needs to go into this raw data layer. We don't want to do any ETL processing along the way, because if you do transformations before it arrives in here, it's hard to know what kind of transformations you did. It's harder to validate your data in your raw data layer to see if it actually matches the source. So we, of course, we would recommend to go for ELT pipelines. So first you extract it from your data source, you load it into your data warehouse, and then the T happens where you do your transformations. So this is only an example of a few data layers you can have. Randstad has a couple of more, but those are the standard data layers that we recommend, where you first have this raw data layer, which is an as-is mapping from the source. So you just dump everything in there. in the next data layer, what you will do is keep a full history of that raw data. So you want to keep track of every change to make sure that you can go back in any point of time from the moment that you started building it. Also, in this data lake, you need to make sure that your sensitive data is encrypted. So in Google Cloud, all the data is encrypted in transit and at rest by default. Now, Flix provides you a way of having this extra layer of encryption on PII data, but we will go into more detail later. Then you have the staging area where you will really start modeling that data. So this is data modeling zone Europe. So you all know about data vault modeling or star schema, snowflake schema, whatever works best for you. And this is where you define all those more complex transformations to define your hubs, satellites, links, which then go to your data warehouse layer, which is basically the model of your staging area, but then with a full history. And then you can have a data mart layer that feeds your downstream applications, such as BI tools. Oops, I clicked on the wrong thing. Sorry. Such as BI tools, machine learning models, etc. And in the meantime, we keep track of access management, data catalogs, orchestration, etc. So how does this work in a bit more technical way? And a very simplified version is, okay, you need to define those SQL transformations. For example, how to model your data, how to go from one layer to another layer. So Flix allows you to either define those queries in YAML file, or you can leverage our Flix Python SDK to automatically generate those transformations. And then what Flix will do is it will automatically detect those dependencies, and it will create this dependency graph for you. So it will know, okay, I first need to run this SQL, and then I need to run that SQL, which is, of course, very great. But it goes further than that, because here you see, okay, this query might be run before this query, but actually we will also know exactly which fields originates from exactly what field in the other table. And at the full end of your data pipeline, we can say, okay, this data mart field that you see here comes from those fields in your raw data layer. And it also doesn't limit you to only do SQL, because you see, as Flix is built on top of Cloud Composer, if you use our Python SDK, you can write any Python operator in between. So if you need to push to some service, there are so many use cases possible where you just want to have some Python scripts running. You're not bound to SQL, but can do anything in your pipeline. So now that you know a bit what the framework does and how it's built, now what does it actually solve? So if you look at a project, a data warehouse project at this scale, the first thing is time. If you need to develop all of this yourself, we see, okay, you easily get to a project of 1 year where you need to define how you will all do this DevOps, this data governance, this orchestration, how to go from dev to QA to prod, all of that. And then once you define this, you can really start working on your SQL writing and, okay, how am I going to model it? Or you can do it in parallel, but at least it takes a lot of time to figure all of this out. Using Flix, you can leverage our framework and just start focusing on your SQLs from day one. And then you just define your SQLs, you put them into our framework, and we make sure that schema changes, all of that are managed along the way. So replication and consistency. This is a perfect example of, for example, Randstad that has, I don't know, was active in 39 countries, something like that. Sorry if I got that wrong, Remco. But at least we have Flix deployed in around 16 countries right now. And the good thing is that they each have their own Flix environment, which is, of course, possible because we have everything defined in infrastructure as code. So you basically need to fill in a configuration file, say, okay, I have a new country, and then you have a full new Flix deployment for that country, making sure access management and everything can be done also in that separated environment. But still leverage that everyone is working in the same way. You can decide upon a unified data model across your countries. And this way you can have multiple departments that each can focus on their things, but still all work in the same way. Then you can leverage the DevOps ecosystem. So this is how a data engineer would work with our system. If we deploy Flix, we deploy a cluster at your organization. So if it will be your Google Cloud environment where we deploy a cluster, and that cluster has a GitLab and Spinnaker deployed within. So you, as a framework end user, you will start writing your SQLs in the YAML files or in the Python SDK, and then you will push to a certain branch. For example, I might be working on a new feature for one of my data pipelines. I push to a feature branch, then GitLab will do the CI. It will test if my SQL can run. It will see if there were schema changes, if there were new PII columns in any of the tables. It will figure out which schema changes, for example, it needs to apply, what it needs to encrypt and everything. And then there's the deployment. So the deployment of Spinnaker will then deploy your DAG, so your direct acyclic graph, on Airflow and run it on your personal sandbox environment. So if I'm a developer and I push to a feature branch, this will go to my personal sandbox environment so that I don't interfere with any other data engineer. If I'm happy with the result in my sandbox environment in Google Cloud, I just merge it from my feature branch to develop, and then Flix will again take care of the rest and make sure it ends up in my development environment. Same with QA and prod. This is really great because you don't need to worry, okay, if I want to test out this new feature, Flix will automatically recreate those tables in a new environment. You can break anything there. There's nothing to worry about, and you don't need to worry about the PII data, for example. I will cover that a bit later. Then, this framework is also not just there to tell you how to do things. We don't tell you, okay, you should have this many layers. You should do your transformations in this way, or use data vault modeling. You remain master of all your decisions. We just simply provide you a way of accelerating that. So there is no loss of flexibility. You remain master of the way that you want to set up your data warehouse. And then a very interesting feature, which is very relevant for example, Randstad that is managing a lot of PII data. So as I explained before, everything in Google Cloud is encrypted in transit and at rest. But if you get access to a certain table, you might be able to see the fields within. There are some features of Google to prevent that, but still we provide you with this way of doing PII encryption and decryption. So let's say that I have this table in my raw data layer. We expect from a data steward to select the fields here that are sensitive. For example, first name and age are sensitive data, and we want to protect them in our subsequent data layers. Now, what Flix will do is it will see, okay, I have this PII data, and those are linked to this certain primary key. What we will do is we will generate a key set, so a sort of encryption key for each of those primary keys, and we will then encrypt this PII data for every subsequent data layer. So if you have, for example, a machine learning engineer that wants to test his model, or you have 5 different environments in your data warehouse, you can be sure that all that data will be protected. And if someone downloads something, it cannot be read. Only people that actually have access to this key set will be able to decrypt it at the further stage. And then only in the data mart layer where you want to really visualize this data, for example, in the dashboard, this will be decrypted again to make sure that that is there. Now, one good feature of this is that, for example, if some of your customers wants to have the right to be forgotten, you don't need to go to 10 million places to actually find, okay, where is that data still sitting in this raw form? You could get rid of the key set, and then all that data is encrypted everywhere. Now, this might not be 100% GDPR compliant, and you might need to get rid of the data at the later stage, which is also something we have on our roadmap. But at least it won't be anywhere in your data warehouse in exactly its raw format, which is much more secure than most organizations have it right now, because it might be spread in buckets, in databases, data warehouses, and it's very hard to keep track of where that data is all going. This is how we have that business process working. So we expect a data steward to fill in a sheet that contains all the columns and tables in your organization. There you can mark things as personal identifiable information. And once you do this then goes, once you fill that in, you can store that sheet. It goes to a data owner that can approve the changes. And then all of this is then again managed by Flix and can go to a data catalog of your choice. So you don't need to be using Google Cloud Data Catalog. It can push to Collibra, Zinea, whatever you're using. And then Flix will make sure that if a new PII field is selected, for example, all of those fields get encrypted everywhere along the way. So that was it. We still have a bit of time left for the Q&A session. So yeah, we're free to answer those.
Great. Thank you, Remco. Thank you, Sven. So we do have a couple questions, and I actually think that you've provided some insight to each of these. There might be more information you could share. The first question is that, Sven, so can you go back to that slide? It was a few slides back where you showed that the architecture was encrypted in different parts, and you were talking a little bit about GDPR. Sorry. Yeah, actually, this is a good one to use for both questions. So the first is, can you talk more about where GDPR is applied in the zone in terms of where data is encrypted? That was
Sure. So right now, how we do that is, okay, in your raw data layer, all your data goes into its raw format. Now, you need to make sure that you have a certain retention policy, because you don't want things to be there in the open. For example, if my name is in that raw data layer, you don't want to be there in the open forever. Now, so this needs to go to your data lake layer, where it will be encrypted. Now, and it will be encrypted in every subsequent stage up until the data mart. So GDPR-wise, you could say, so let's say that now my personal data is in there, and I ask to be forgotten. Right now, what we will do is you just need to get rid of my personal encryption key in the data warehouse, and it will be encrypted in all subsequent stages. So no one can decrypt it anymore, except if our encryption algorithm becomes legacy in maybe 10 years. So that's, of course, something you need to be taken care of. But we are also, we are also working on a feature where we actually allow also to completely get rid of the data. And for example, replace my name with just something that says anonymized, for example. But right now, for today's standards, just having it in an encrypted form and not being able to decrypt it anymore, is already way better than most companies do it.
Okay. I can also say from our point of view at Randstad, the further you go to the left in this picture, the less people have access to the thing at all, right? So the raw data lake, the lights are off in that zone. There is absolutely nothing. It's all automated. So I don't have developers or data scientists that have access to the data lake by default at all. In fact, we cut everything up in a million small projects, right? So and this is also something, because we follow a sort of a zero trust model. So you could build data oceans or data lakes by making it one big project that people can get in. We are not that way. We have a million different small projects that we all need to govern, because by default we want every door to be closed at Randstad.
So at Randstad, is this the architecture you guys use as well?
Yes.
So it's very similar. Okay.
Yes.
So there might be a layer more in between. Sorry.
Yeah. So a lot of people are talking about a warehouse as a physical warehouse, of Amazon, where once you're in, you can see all the shelves. Our data warehouse is not at all like that, right? You need it's more like a storage unit facility with a lot of closed doors that you that you see once you get it.
Got it. Got it. Thank you. And a few other questions too. And this is a great slide to ask these. So how do you promote the contents of all the data you store to the client? Do you provide some kind of catalog, or is there any tool you would recommend for that purpose? Because I know, Sven, you were talking a little bit about Calibra, and you said you can kind of choose any catalog tool.
Yeah, sure. So the thing is, as you are writing those transformations, maybe I can go, you can click on something. For example, here, what you see is I can write those SQL transformations. Now, if you put this in a tool like dbt or Dataform, they're also able to find the dependencies and create this dependency graph. Now, the good thing about Flix is that it really parses your query. So we will take this query, we will parse it, we will find exactly which fields you are mentioning, because we need to do that for the PII service. We need to know, okay, what field do we need to encrypt? So we really go deep into that query, find it all out, rewrite your query, and then run it on Google Cloud. Now, the good thing about this is that we know exactly which field is coming from which place. So all of that information, together with maybe some extra metadata that you define here, such as descriptions or anything, we can push all that data. So we push all the data to the data catalog, and there you will have an overview of all your tables, all your data layers, and the metadata that is either generated by Flix or provided by yourself. And indeed, so how this works is if you push a change to Flix, it will actually go to a pub/sub topic, and then you can push that to any solution. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. And another question too, what is your vision on the data consumption, the distribution? What happens with the serving layer? How do you limit exports to Excel and MS Access, for example, which bring their own GDPR risk?
Well, I can answer that question from a Randstad point of view. From a Randstad point of view, I'm working very hard to make sure that that none of our solutions on the right actually have mass export functionalities at all, right? Because one of the things, of course, you have to prevent shadow IT from happening in this case, because we're talking about BI data, because also Sven's framework doesn't have any impact on somebody downloading something on the other end and building yet another script on the side. So this is really something, protecting our data needs to happen all the way from the left to all the way to the right. And the further you go to the right, the trickier it gets. That is absolutely true. So that is from a Randstad point of view, the answer. No exports.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you should try to make sure that the least people have access to this data. Like Remco was mentioning, actually in the raw data, up until data warehouse, there is no human that should have access. So this is all done by services. And then in the data mart layer, of course, you need to make sure that, for example, Looker as a BI tool can read that data, but then make sure that you have, for example, your proper access management and don't allow people to export and do that in the BI tool itself. But that's managed outside of Flix, let's say.
And could you clarify a bit more the difference between the data lake part of the architecture and the staging area, like how they differ?
Yeah, sure. So you have the data lake layer, which is the raw data as is. So we don't want to do any transformations from your, let's say that I have a SQL database. I want to have exactly the same schema in my data lake layer. But then just with the entire history. So my primary key will not only be there once in my table. No, I will have my primary key there for every time that there was a change. In the staging area, you want to start combining those sources. So you want to say, okay, I have this data, all those CVs. I might combine it with some websites data, I don't know, and start modeling that data using, for example, Data Vault. This is where you will do that first modeling in your staging area. In the data lake, it's just your raw data layer.
Yeah. So technically speaking, you do a lot of ELT to get it into data lake, and then you ETL on the way to the right. So
the
no
staging
transformation. You store everything in its original format, assuming that you might need something that you don't need today, but you might need it tomorrow.
I see. So the data lake really has more of a source system kind of perspective on it with full data.
100%.
Okay, got it.
Yeah,
got it. Interesting.
Which also means, in my case, if you deal with 39 countries, that you do need to store all that knowledge, right? Because I don't know what field 68 in the Indian data warehouse is, or what status 9 is for a talent record in Spain, right? So you do need to get your data very well described, because otherwise, of course, also in a year, if you don't do that, then in a year from now, I will never know what is in the data lake in the first place. It will be gibberish to me, because I don't know the system that is behind it.
You're absolutely right. I remember when I was a data warehouse developer, that was a good way to protect ourselves too. If somebody looked at our data warehouse and said you have an issue with data quality, we can point back to an area and say, well, we got it from a particular source system, and this was the problem. Yeah. Very cool. Great. Other questions?
I see a question for Sven on-prem, Sven. I see an interesting question pop up here that you might want to answer. I don't have that problem because we don't have any prem, so that's something for you, Sven.
So yeah, we have. We do a lot of migrations from on-premise data warehouses, just as Teradata, for example. And so, are we planning to move everything to GCP? So that's indeed. There's a whole migration framework that is recommended by Google that we follow. So first, what you do is you indeed dump the data as it is in the legacy data warehouse to the data warehouse in Google Cloud. Then you will make sure to translate your SQLs. Still try to keep the same format, because if you don't do a migration that fits with the on-premise data warehouse, it becomes very difficult to validate that you did it correctly. So first thing that you try to translate it in exactly the same way. Once you validated that, you can start optimizing your queries to make sure that it is as optimized as possible for the technology at hand. And then you start connecting your upstream pipelines that feed the data, and then connect the downstream ones as well. Does that answer your question? Yeah, we don't have anything here actually, but I'll assume that it is answered.
Excellent. Any other questions? All right. Well, we are right on time. Thank you very much, Remco and Sven. Really wonderful presentation. Oh, wait. Before you go, we have one more. Good. Okay. Storing data as is in the data lake usually means casting to a text file, whatever was the original data type. So what does as is mean for you?
So as is means making sure to keep track of the same column names and don't do any transformations along the way. So casting to text. So we're not talking here about a data lake in, for example, cloud storage or Amazon S3 bucket, where you dump everything in raw files, for example, TXT files or CSV files. We are already talking here about semi-structured data that fits into a BigQuery schema. So BigQuery is able to do both relational schemas, but just as well JSON structures, for example. So it can have repeated records up to 10 level deeps. So you don't want to do any flattening, for example, before you push it. You want to keep that structure, push it, but we're not talking here about files. We're really talking about the database already. Just make sure that you don't change the schema and you don't change any data along the way.
Yes, and then maybe worth mentioning that indeed we haven't talked BigQuery so far, but I think BigQuery is the absolute star of the GCP platform, and we built our whole analytics structure on top of BigQuery, and especially all these capabilities like Sven just said about the nesting, and it is our favorite database of choice, at least at Randstad, across 39 countries.
Great. Thank you. All right. Thank you both. Thanks everyone for participating. We'll see you in the next session.
Thank you.